Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Mark, we haven't had a chance to chat with you for a while. How do you view the additions of USC and UCLA to the conference?
First, it's good to see you, Andy. First off, I do want to take a second to recognize Rachel Blount. Rachel obviously is going through a lot right now, and we're thinking about Rachel and Pat, and our whole department is. So I want to make sure I said that to the group. But, obviously, I'm very excited to have the addition of USC and UCLA. I can tell you our executive team, I give Julie Manning a lot of credit. Our executive team did a Zoom call with their executive team from each one of those schools. I know Mike, the AD at USC, very well. I know Martin, the AD at UCLA, very well. Chip actually covered Martin when he was a student athlete back in college, so they have a long relationship. But I think it's good for the Big Ten. It's exciting for our conference, our student athletes, and as Commissioner Warren says, it takes our conference from coast to coast now, which is great exposure for the great institutions in the Big Ten. So excited to have them in the conference.
You've had a couple of strange years here with the pandemic and now this historic media rights deal coming on. How's that affected or impacted budgeting?
Well, I always preface this with my staff, and Paul can verify. I'm 4 years a Shakespeare undergrad English major, and when you ask me about budget questions, but it's obvious these media deals are important because if you look at any athletic department, Chip, we all have very similar revenue streams. Your revenue streams are your ticket sales, your fundraising, your media revenue, your licensing agreements, your partnerships with Gopher Sports Properties, et cetera. And so, obviously the pandemic, we finished with that loan of about $21.5 million that we still have to pay back. I think people have forgotten about that, and that's why this new media deal is a big part of our program as we move forward. Obviously, we knew this new media deal was going to be coming. It was going to have an impact on our program, but there's things we've got to take care of in-house as we look at that new media deal and how it'll help our program to continue to compete in the best conference in America.
Has fundraising rebounded? Going back to the heart of the pandemic 2 years ago?
It has, Doogie. I give Dusty Clements and our Golden Gopher Fund staff a lot of credit. We had an incredible year last year. We are so grateful for the people who believe in our program. You all have heard me say this before. It's awesome when we can tell donors that we're the highest rated public school in the country with respect to student athlete academic success. I think our department grade point average was a 3.4. We have our highest ever graduation rate at 96%. Those are awesome stories to tell. And then if you look at the Directors Cup, I think we finished 27th or 28th last year, which means we're in the top 10%. And so I think donors see what we're doing here. They believe in what our coaches are doing, what our student athletes are doing. Again, so we've had a good story to tell. And when you have a football program winning the most games they've won, since the early 1900s, those are all good stories to tell. So our fundraising continues to be very, very aggressive and very strong. And we're just really grateful for the hard work of our Golden Gopher Fund staff, but also the donors who believe in our program and believe in our student athletes.
Mark, what is the remaining debt on the Athletes Village?
Great question. My last count, and I may be off a little bit, and Paul may have to get you a final number, but I think we're around in that $38 to $40 million range that we continue to fundraise towards Athletes Village. As you know, we've done many new facilities along those lines, a new volleyball performance center, a new wrestling center, a new golf house, and some other improvements to facilities where we haven't taken on additional debt. We fundraised that money up front. But again, our fundraising continues to be very strong, and Athletes Village has been an absolute game changer for our program. We call it the wow factor when a recruit comes into your building and they have a chance to walk through this facility. It's good when they pull out their cell phones and they start taking pictures, and that Athletes Village has given us the definite wow factor that's impacted all of our programs. So it's been great for us.
At the trend lines in college sports, it seems like it's going towards student athletes being paid at some juncture. How is the university preparing for that?
Great question, Andy. What I can say is, it's hard to believe I'm starting my 7th year here as the athletic director, and having been here 4 years before, and then my time obviously at Kentucky, Boise, and Syracuse. And what I love about Minnesota and what drew me back to Minnesota was we have always supported our athletes to the highest level per the NCAA rules, and that won't change. And so if some sort of compensation comes down the road, I can assure you that Minnesota will do everything we can to continue to fully support all of our student athletes at the highest level, given what the NCAA rules are at that time. So it's obviously a hot topic. People are talking about it, but again, our goal is to make sure we provide that first-class experience to our student athletes.
Mentioned the coast-to-coast nature the conference is going to be at. Being in the Midwest helps you, but what's your concern level with travel for the non-revenue sports who are playing, midweek sometimes.
Yeah, Chip. I think we're eager to have those conversations with the Big Ten office. When this deal is announced, obviously football is such a big part of it, and obviously they only have to travel one time, right? You may have to go out to the West Coast one time, and the conferences, Commissioner Warren has shared with the athletic directors at the conference offices, looking at different scheduling parameters, what that might look like. We've had a couple head coaches meetings or all coaches meetings with our staff, and we want to make sure we get feedback from our coaches and what they think the best things are in terms of what makes sense for travel for the student athletes. Obviously the USC, UCLA student athletes will have more travel on their end than the kids here in the Midwest and the rest of the remaining Big Ten footprint. But again, those are conversations we need to have. But there's no question student athlete welfare is an incredibly important piece of what we do. And I give President Gable a lot of credit. She has a strong voice in the Big Ten Conference. She's a leader in that area, and she recognizes the importance of providing that great experience for our student athletes. So we'll have those conversations. But again, we want to make sure that it treats the student athletes the right way in terms of how they balance their academics and their athletics. And where we're different than all the professional teams, we love all the professional teams, but where we're different, our goal is to graduate our kids, and we're doing it at 96% clip, which is awesome. And we need to continue to have that focus to make sure we prepare these kids for the next 40 years of their lives.
How excited are you about the current landscape of Gopher football, just from the roster to the staff and every aspect of the program?
Yeah, Daniel, I can't tell you, Coach Fleck and what he and his staff have done, the student athletes, I literally just got an email. Paul was shooting me a text that we were running a few minutes early, and I was just reading an email from a gentleman who was at the state fair yesterday and interacted with our football team, and he talked about how nice and courteous these young men were and how they represented the institution. And PJ has done everything we've asked him to do, and Heather and he and the impact they've had on our program will be lasting, and we're just so grateful for the leadership of him. And obviously, we've got a veteran group back. PJ's very optimistic. I know he was in here talking to you earlier today, and again, we compete in a very tough conference, but I feel like we have an opportunity to do some really special things, and that credit goes to PJ and those student athletes who have completely bought in to that culture and doing things the right way, academically, athletically, and socially.
Mark, the football team obviously beat Wisconsin last year. You know what that means to Minnesota fans when it comes to expansion and potential, realignment with divisions. How important is it for, those traditional rivalries and games like that?
Yeah, well, selfishly for Minnesota, Marcus, I think we've played Wisconsin 131 times. It's the longest or most games played in the Big Ten Conference. That's a huge game for us. Obviously, the University of Iowa, I think we've played them 115, 116 times. I think that's the third or fourth longest streak in the Big Ten in terms of the number of conference games. And, again, we haven't talked a lot about scheduling in out years. You all may have seen we've all taken down our schedules off our website, our future schedules, because obviously the Big Ten, we're in the process of changing those schedules. What does it look like and those type of things? But I can tell you as the athletic director at Minnesota, we would be strong advocates to keep those rivalries in place because they mean a lot to our fan bases. We recognize that. It means a lot to our student athletes. It means a lot to our coaches. So we're hopeful that those long-term rivalries stay in place when we add the 2 new additional schools.
What would you like to see with the football schedule, given the fact that there's been kind of free agency with the transfer portal and the postseason play and essentially the draft with recruiting all going on at the same time? What would you like to see as far as schedules or windows to maybe streamline it?
Well, 2 comments, Andy. First off, I'm all about consistency, and I get consistency is boring, but right now we have no consistency. I mean, there's so much going on right now in college athletics and football. It's all sports. The transfer portal, who's doing what, who's doing this, those type of things. And I think we've got to get some sort of national voice to give us some consistency and some guardrails so we know how to operate. And I talk all the time. PJ and I have had a long conversation, Coach Johnson, Coach Whalen. We've had lots of conversations about we will always make value-based decisions at Minnesota. That's very important to me. It's very important to our department. You've heard me say one of the lessons I've learned when I was here from 2001 to 2005 to now being back here for my 7th year is doing it right in Minnesota matters. We want to make sure we do things the right way. So I think we got to have that consistency, and we'll continue to make those value-based decisions. But the second area is, I think you see a lot of good coaches getting out of coaching football right now. It is nonstop, 24/7. And, PJ and I always joke, we talk almost every day. If we're in the office, we talk in person. If not, we talk on the phone or we talk, through text or whatever. And I don't think people realize how much they are on the road recruiting. Not only PJ, but the assistant coaches. And somehow, recruiting is a lifeline. It's the backbone of your program. That's the greatest lesson I learned at Kentucky. And if you look at the hires I make, it's all about recruiting and being able to get the kids to come to your institution. But we've got to figure out some way to save these coaches because because the amount of time and the pressure that's on them to recruit and be out there all the time, it's overwhelming. And again, I think we got to find some balance for them on that side of it.
Mark, what's your thoughts on how NIL is working? Just not here, but just, across the country.
Clunky. Again, NIL, we're just over a year now, 13 months into it, I guess, or almost 14 months now that we're approaching September 1st. And, the thing that I'm excited about, again, when I talk about value-based decisions, those just aren't a phrase or a word we throw out. No, those are things we take very seriously here at Minnesota. And, we've worked very closely, Jeremiah Carter, Julie Manning, they deserve a lot of credit. Our Office of General Counsel, Doug Peterson, Brian Slavitt, Brent Benrud, we've been working with them to make sure that as we approach NIL as an institution at Minnesota, even though we don't have a lot of guardrails nationally, we want to make sure that we make the best long-term decisions for our student athletes and programs. And, as you know, Chip, I think we have 22 programs. I know that. We have about 585 student athletes. I think last year over 130 students had NIL deals. I think we had over 260 deals total in the department across all 22 sports. So I think we feel like we've been in a good space with that, but there's no doubt that's continues to grow, and it continues to be an important part of the recruiting cycle. And again, I give our coaches a lot of credit because they're not beating down my door saying we need to promise X, Y, and Z. They just want to make sure we do it the right way. When we represent Minnesota, we do it the right way, and we can get the right kids to come into our program.
Mark, can you talk about Kevin Warren's leadership and some of the things he's done in the off season? Talk about the trip to Selma, but also the big, money deal or media deal.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you bringing up Selma because that's obviously near and dear to his heart. But he took a group of student athletes. I think Minnesota, Paul. I think we had 5 student athletes, and Peyton Owens went down there. And you talk about an impactful weekend, and we had members from all Big Ten institutions that did this trip. And I give Kevin a lot of credit because we all have tunnel vision, right? When you're in these jobs, you have tunnel visions, and Kevin has kind of shown the athletic directors, the conference, a new vision, and has opened up some new windows to look out, which are educational for our student athletes. And obviously, the media deal gets a lot of attention, but he is very active with our student athletes. Right before COVID, if you remember, he had a chance to come on our campus and spend the day with us, and he was eager to spend time with our student athletes. He spent time with President Gable, her leadership team. He spent time with me and our leadership team, but he really wanted to spend time with student athletes and to hear their voice, to hear their thoughts. So again, just really thankful for his leadership, and selfishly, I'm thankful he was on the search committee that brought me here. So that's a big help too. But we're really grateful for his leadership.
1 or 2 more for Mark?
How excited are you for Lindsay heading into the Hall of Fame? And was it like 2 weeks? Will you head out there as well?
Yeah, I will be out there. It's amazing, Doogie. I had a chance when she was elected to the Hall of Fame. Obviously, we have the conversation and talk with her. And then when I was down at the Final Four with the men's basketball committee work, Lindsay was being down there because they recognized all the Hall of Fame inductees. And she and I were grabbing a Starbucks at the hotel, at the main hotel. And after she got up and left, I had more people come to me and say, "That's Lindsay Whalen." Yep, that's Lindsay Whalen, that type of stuff. But I will be out there for the celebration. We'll fly out there, and I'll fly back late Friday night to be back for the game on the 10th, the football game on the 10th. But we're excited for her and excited with her program. A lot of new faces on that program, recruiting a great recruiting class that she's brought in. So we've got great expectations for her in that program this year. But excited for her and the well-deserved recognition.
Talking about scheduling, Mark, what might be out there, I know it's conjecture, but do you see a possibility that having Michigan on the football schedule with some type of rotation would be realistic? And of course the great legacy going way back between Minnesota and Michigan in football. What are your thoughts on that, and how might you be able to prioritize that?
Yeah, Dave, again, that's another great example of one of those rivalry games that means so much to both institutions. And again, the Big Ten, we pulled down our schedules. Obviously, we have our schedule this year. We pulled down all future schedules, and we'll have those conversations, with the conference office. But as I said before, I feel like it's my job to do everything I can to protect the interests of the University of Minnesota in the Big Ten Conference. And I know that game's a big game for Minnesota fans, and I know what that jug means and those type of things. So, again, those are things I would advocate for when we have that opportunity to talk with Commissioner and the rest of the athletic directors on what that future football schedule will look like.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.